Alright, this video is on another victim. A victim that I didn't know existed when I first started speaking out about the things that happened to this woman. How is that I could speak about the crimes committed against this woman when I didn't even know she existed? Well, it's because it's Boulder Police Department's MO. It's not just the Boulder Police Department, it's also the Boulder County Sheriff's Department. They work together. They work together to screw over the homeless people. Colorado's homeless rate has gone up. It's doubled in less than 2 years. Rent has gone up. We're having this issue nationwide because, well, there's this little place, not sure if you heard of it, it's called Los Angeles. Their population for the homeless is huge. It costs 3 times minimum wage, 3 minimum wage full-time jobs just to keep a house there, just to keep a roof over your head. That's not even counting the money that you have to save up in order to get it. Meanwhile, everything is more expensive while homeless. This woman was raped. That is specifically what she wrote about. When I say that they victimize the victims and the predators go free, I mean it. There are rapists on the Boulder Police Department. But you don't care. The Daily Camera didn't tell you that the police are bad guys, so they must not be the bad guys. Hollywood movies tell you that the cops are the good guys and that it's okay to do the things that they've done to me and to these other people. I'm going to read this. It's from Teresa, mycelia. Raped and arrested and the quest for justice. Now, I got this from Boulder Rights Watch. It's an open group. Anybody can go here and take a look at this. It says, I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish I didn't have to tell strangers about how I was raped and arrested for defending myself. But I feel so desperate to make change, and it seems like the only thing I can do is to tell my story and raise awareness. Sounds familiar, don't it? I got hundreds of these, by the way. I will be sending this video to lawmakers, and everyone on the Boulder Police Task Force. I will make sure this system changes, even if it's the last thing I do. Where have we heard that before? I refuse to live in a society that treats rape victims like criminals. Where have we heard that before? I am doing this for myself and for my future daughters, for all our daughters, children, and everyone else who is at risk. Where have we heard that before? Not just your daughters, though, your sons as well. Boys are easier to victimize than girls. They're less likely to come forward. They're less likely to speak up, and people are less likely to believe them. Here's a brief background on my situation. I was violently raped in Boulder, and when I called the police for help, I was treated as a criminal. I was told to stop lying or I'd be arrested. I was told it was impossible that I was raped because I didn't have bruises, but the incident had only happened an hour ago, and it takes 24 to 48 hours for bruises to show. The officer acted offended, and it acted like he knew my rapist and was best friends with him. He even told my mother, I think something probably happened to her, but it could never be this guy. At one point, the officer tried to convince me to change my story and say it was someone else. I told the officer about the blood all over my clothes and the evidence they could find at his house, but the officer refused to take any evidence. He said the blood all over my pants was just dirt and that he didn't need evidence. Where has this all been heard before? Oh yeah, from me. We'll continue. They could have found enough evidence to convict my rapist, but they just downright refused. Yeah, they could have collected enough evidence to lock up Tim Beeson and Ted Bollinger. and Alicia Bollinger, and all their fucking cronies. But to this day, no officer will take a look. The one officer to pretend to, he didn't pretend to for very long. Less than 24 hours. Let's continue with this woman's story, though. Law enforcement immediately, let's see. They could have found enough evidence to convict my rapist, but they just downright refused. Law enforcement immediately think that rape victims are lying, and it is because they don't even try to collect evidence. This is not uncommon, and I urge you to read this article if you have the time. Slate.com/news and politics 2019/05 sexual assault, rape, sympathy, no prison, HTML. Well, if you go to Boulder Rights Watch, you'll see the links. The officer was trying to find any way to criminalize me. He ended up arresting me because I admitted to ripping out the hair of the drunken fool who was raping me. They said I admitted assault. They arrested me for defending myself. Eventually, they had to drop the charges when a detective saw my case and realized that the officer didn't collect important evidence. Gee! Where has this happened before? Oh yeah! In multiple cases across Colorado with me involved. And hundreds before me and hundreds after because you don't give a shit. If that detective never came in to save me, I could have gone to prison for defending myself against a rapist. Same shit they're trying to do to me. Except in this case, it wasn't rape. It was false accusations that resulted in people assaulting me, and the police absolutely refusing to do their jobs, up to and including assaulting me. Let's get back to this lady's story, though. When I tried to file a complaint against the officer, I was told I wasn't allowed because I had been arrested. I was told the same thing. The officers assaulted me, then charged me with assault, and I couldn't get the officers to take a report because I had been charged with a crime. These guys did everything in their power to prevent me from being able to have the time, money, or resources to defend myself. Fuck the police. Let's get back to this, though. It was another officer who was running the complaint department, and he was protecting his buddy. Yep, where have we heard this before? The officer mocked me and called me a criminal and hung up on me. Where have we heard this before? I contacted an organization that informed me that police cannot refuse a complaint just because I had been arrested. So I tried to file a complaint again, but this time the officer said it was too late to file a complaint. Where have we heard this before? He said they already disciplined the officer but wouldn't give me details. Where have we heard this before? I was arrested when I was raped, and I feel a strong sense of responsibility to make sure this can't happen to others. Where have we heard this before? It says, I have severe PTSD and depression because I think about this every day. Where have we heard this before? It is impossible to feel safe when I know how police will treat me if I get raped again. Where have we heard this before? This has affected every area of my life, and it has caused me to be chronically suicidal. Where have we heard this before? The only thing that keeps me alive is the thought that maybe I can change this. Maybe I can help fix this broken system that criminalizes rape victims and sympathizes with rapists. Where have we heard this all before? Every time I tell my story, I meet so many other women who had similar experiences with the police when they were raped, and we can't let this continue. Not just women, men as well. It's fucking disgusting. The victims try to come forward about the police brutality, and the police make fun of us and arrest us and refuse to take our reports. And you want to talk about how you Murdering foreign kids, broke foreign kids, who don't have the money for bullets to put in that goddamn AK. And you're doing this for my freedom, right? You fucking bastards. Alright, possible solutions. Police officers should not be handling rape cases. I agree with that at this point. Someone who is specifically trained and cares about rape victims should be there to collect evidence. That's the same thing with people with autism, with PTSD. We need actual people to do their jobs, not crooked ass cops who are going to refuse to do their jobs, especially in the case of rape. Alright. Some states have a special victims division who have had specialized training in dealing with sex crime cases. Yeah, and when I was a kid, they didn't do anything. As an adult, they don't do anything. You try to turn in a police officer, they don't do anything. If you're raped and you go to the special victims division, what happens? The same goddamn thing, because they're protecting their fellow officers. Number one should be body cameras on at all times while on duty. If you don't want that camera pointed at your genitalia when you're using the bathroom, keep in mind it's on your chest. It's pointed forward. That camera should not be pointing at your genitalia at any point in time. 2. It should be illegal for police to refuse to take evidence, especially in violent crimes like rape. I agree. The crimes against me were violent. The police not only refused to collect evidence, they refused to take a report. 3. Police cannot police themselves. Complaints against officers should go directly to the task force, and police should not be involved in handling their own complaints. It should be professional, and you should have a database where you collect misconduct reports. I agree with that too. At least 5 of the officers that I tried to make a report against, tried to file a complaint against, brought my complaints back. The very officer that I was complaining about brought my report back to make fun of me and to gloat at me. In multiple counties, multiple jails. Fuck you. So they told me I had to go talk to these people who are in the police department, then those people, and then those people, and then these people. Meanwhile, I'm talking to everybody that I can, trying to get somebody to fucking listen. From the FBI to the Boulder Police Department, Boulder County Sheriff's Department, all of them took part in not only hiding the wrongdoing of other officers, but also doing wrong against myself and others as a result of this case. Alright, 4. Police officers need to be required to have a 4-year degree. Currently, police officers only need 6 months training. The reason their training is only 6 months long is because they're not trained to go after criminals. They're trained to go after whoever the city is least likely to get sued by. That heroin dealer who's got your kid all fucking doped up. Yeah, that guy's got enough money to fight it in court. That drug dealer has enough money to win in court against your honest police officers. So, who do the police officers go after? Well, they don't want to lose their job over arresting a fucking heroin dealer, do they? No. They'd rather risk losing their job on somebody easy. Somebody the public doesn't care about. Somebody that so much propaganda has been thrown at that it's legal to do whatever you want, because even though it's illegal, it's only illegal on paper. If people don't care about your rights enough to stand up for your rights don't actually exist. We the people means that you people need to stop being bitches and turning a blind eye when it happens to somebody else. Anyway, I had to get more training to become a massage therapist. When you set your standards as low as a GED and 6 months training, you are asking for misconduct and abuse. Such a high position of power should be held to the highest standards. A college education is not just about what you learn, it is about what you experience. College gives you an experience to interact with a diverse array of people from different backgrounds. College teaches you to think critically and to analyze situations in a healthy way. Officers should be taught gender studies, minority studies, psychology, and law. They actually do. The psychology part is an extremely important part of breaking your human rights. Breaking the law to destroy your human rights and to monsterize you. Like this woman, as the rape victim, obviously must be a predator because she was raped because she pulled the hair out of the son of a bitch who was raping her. And college. Boy, would it be nice to go to college. I analyzed the situation. I never went to college. 5. Police should be licensed and have their licenses revoked when they commit crimes or cover up crimes. Boulder officers' Smiley's racist tendencies will just go to another department in another state. When doctors lose their license, they are no longer able to practice medicine in any state, and that is how it should be with police. I agree. Roger Goldman, first of all, it's well understood if you think of the hundreds of other occupations and professions at the state level, doctors, lawyers, architects, you name it, that require licenses, and yet we don't traditionally think about doing something like that for police. When you think about licensing as a way to protect the public, then of all the professions that ought to be licensed, we should require law enforcement to meet those same professional standards, if not tougher standards. I agree.
Justice, so it seems like the only way I can do anything about this is to just talk about it and let people know that this is happening. And I know that it's not an isolated situation, and every time I talk about it, other people say that they were treated like criminals when they were raped too, so this is going to be really hard for me to do, so it was about 3 years ago that, well, first of all, let me just say, first of all, I'm going to briefly talk about what happened, and then I'm going to talk about how I was treated by the police, and then I'm going to talk about all the things that I've tried to do to try to get justice for this, and then I'm going to give you a list of possible solutions to fix some of these flaws in our justice system. So, first of all, the person who raped me was someone who I thought was my friend. I was about to go move to Oregon at the time. I was going to go check out some schools. They have some really good schools for soil science and microbiology, and I was about to leave to go do that. So I wanted to see my friend before I left. And well, long story short, he wanted to have sex, and I did not want to have sex. I was on my period. I was in a lot of pain. I just didn't want to have sex with him, and he got very angry at this, and I told him I didn't want to have sex, and he got mad and got on top of me and pinned me down. He forced my pants off. I was like screaming and crying and trying to pull my pants back up, and I was hitting him and punching him, and he was just like ramming his fingers inside of me. He was ramming his penis inside of me. I was like beating his face. At one point I was able to get my legs around him, around his neck, and I grabbed his hair and then just started beating him in the head, and then I like ripped out his hair.
Yes, ma'am.
And eventually I was able to get away, and as soon as I got home, I told my mom what happened, and she called the police for me, and as soon as the police showed up, I just felt like they saw me as the criminal, and I felt like this officer was angry at me. I felt like he thought I did something wrong.
It's just the way they treat you.
He just kept trying to convince me to change my story. He kept trying to tell me that if I don't stop lying, that I'll be arrested, that it's illegal to lie to police officers.
It's not illegal for them to lie to you, though.
He told me that I couldn't have been raped because I didn't have bruises yet, but it had just happened an hour prior, so bruises don't show up until like 24 or 48 hours later. He just seemed very defensive. He seemed angry at me. He seemed like he was trying to find every little flaw in everything I said. He just tried to downplay everything that I said.
Did they refuse to take your report
this
too,
guy
young
was
woman?
his friend or something. It seemed like he was like trying to cover up something from his friend, and at one point he even told my mom like he believed something happened to me, but it couldn't have been this guy. It could never have been this person. So I told him about all the evidence that he could find. I told him about all the blood on my clothes because I was on my period, and he was like ramming his fingers inside of me while trying to still pull my pants down, because I was like, we were in this struggle to keep, like, I was trying to keep my pants up and he was trying to pull them down, and he had blood all over his fingers because I was on my period, and so there's blood just all over my clothes from this, and blood on my shirt, blood on my pants. They would have found blood all over his house. They would have found blood on his penis. They would have found blood under his fingernails. They could have found so much DNA, so much evidence. And when I told the officer about this, he told me that the blood all over me was just dirt. He said that I was a liar and it was just dirt, and that he didn't need to take evidence. He could have found all the evidence to convict this guy, and he just said no. He said, no, I'm not going to take any evidence. I don't need evidence because I already know you're a liar. He just kept telling me I need to stop lying.
Police playing judge, jury, and executioner. This needs to stop. This is why body cams need to happen.
I committed a third-degree assault because I admitted to ripping out this guy's hair and beating on him. So I called the police after I was raped, like right after I was raped, and they saw me as the criminal. They arrested me because I defended myself. I've never been to jail before. I've never really done anything wrong.
Whereas me, I couldn't defend myself. If I defend myself,
I was sitting in this jail cell
I get locked up,
getting raped,
like she did.
I've never felt
but even
so
if I don't
alone
defend
and
myself,
so unsafe. You're supposed to be able to trust these people. You're supposed to go to them for help, and I feel like he did not want to keep me so safe, and he just... So I went to jail after being raped, and eventually my mom was able to bail me out, and eventually they had to drop the charges because, I mean, it never would have held up in court. It didn't make any sense. A detective ended up seeing my case, and they realized that something was wrong because this officer didn't take any evidence. He even refused to give me a rape kit. I asked him if I could get a rape kit. He said
repeatedly in
no.
my cases.
He said
repeatedly.
My God.
And the officers kept gloating in my face, saying things like,
this detective saw my case, and
well, you'll have to tell that to your lawyer. You'll have to get an attorney. You can get an attorney when you get out. Meanwhile, they kept on transferring me from one county to another to prevent me from making a report against those officers for their wrongdoing. Between them and everything that they were doing to try to shut me up, what the volunteers and their cronies were doing to try to shut me up, I spent over 30 years fighting against the exact things that happened to this young woman. Because those things happened to me in the state of Colorado as a child. But for me, I didn't have the benefit of my mom giving a shit or my dad giving a shit. When I was abused, I was arrested. When I was abused, I was assaulted. When I was abused, I was treated like the predator. And you guys want me to shut up. How about you shut the fuck up and listen? I'm not the only person this shit happened to.
Eventually, they were able to drop my case. So, after this, I just went into the deepest depression, and I didn't leave my room for weeks. I couldn't eat or do anything. I just felt so unsafe and so...
At least she had a room to hide in. She wasn't stuck out there with the police and the public trying to harm her for shit that she didn't do.
Asking I think it was my
stuck out in the open, attorney, stuck traveling, stuck spending all of her resources.
About them not taking evidence, and they told me not to worry about it until after the trial. They said it would be too stressful to do something about it right now, so I believed them, and it ended up taking 2 years to go to trial. I called the police right after I was raped, and it took 2 years to finally go to trial. There was 8 arraignments, so that means every couple months they would pick a date to go to trial, and then right before it, they would be they would change the date, and I would.
And this all costs you money. And time.
Trying to.
And you relive it every fucking day.
Just every couple months, I would think I was gonna go to trial for this, and I had to mentally prepare myself every time, and then they just kept changing the date. So it's finally about 2 years later, finally went to trial. Of course, they can't do anything because he refused to take evidence.
Right?
There was no evidence, so of course they... So, right after this trial, I tried to file a complaint. I contacted the internal affairs and tried to file a complaint, and guess who runs the complaint department? It's another police officer. And the whole time I told him my story, I told him what happened, and this guy just went off on me. He was making fun of me, belittling me. He acted he said that I was a criminal, and he said that people who go to jail aren't allowed to file complaints against officers. And then he hung up on me. So at this point, I just start contacting every organization in Colorado, every rape survivor, whatever organization, and it was just one disappointment after another. It was just very disorganized, and I remember one time I was on the phone with them. I told them my whole story. Telling my story is just so traumatic for me. I feel like I am
on the bright side, she's not stuck telling that story, cut off from all of her friends and family because people who weren't there for any of it, who have no right to judge because they weren't there for any of it, who weren't able to see the whole truth, want to destroy everything that I have to say because it doesn't fit their idea of hatred and bias towards me. Meanwhile, this young woman is attractive, obviously. I'm not. She is a female. I'm not. She has a room. I don't. This woman went through the same shit that I did. I'm trying to help raise awareness, not just Samuel Leon Lawrence IV or Zaid Atkinson or Michelle Rodriguez. This woman's name is Teresa mycelia. She's another one of the people I'm cut off from communicating with for over a year and a half of pretty much non-stop Facebook bans. I'm frustrated because no matter what, the police are not held accountable for any of their wrongdoings. They are taught who it is that they can victimize and who they can't. That's why their schooling is only 6 months. How not to get the city you work for sued. Judges and public pretenders are taking part in this across the state of Colorado. I've been speaking out about it for years because it's been happening for years. I'm sick and tired of innocent people having to go through the shit that I had to go through and the things this woman had to go through because you, the general public, are a bunch of pussies.